of my basement outside the second freezer. I've gone through the seeds that I wanted to pull out, either for inspiration, next to my paint cans for the caboose, the seeds that I want to pull out for my early garden attempts to get some really, organic, nutritious stuff going, and also to inspire me. The other thing I like to do is plant some things in containers, because we've got a great front porch that gets the late day sun, so anything that doesn't need to be in full sun does very well on the front porch in containers and pots. So, and then digging for seeds, I found these walnuts that I had frozen a couple years ago. Black walnuts are really good. They've got amazing healing qualities. You can Google it, and they've got a bit of a funky taste. It's like cilantro. People either love it or hate it, and Cog doesn't care for it much, but I can sneak these into cookies or breads or muffins, and a lot of the time he doesn't realize they're not regular walnuts. So I'm going to bring some of those up and put them in the upstairs freezer, and as long as they are well wrapped, and I've got these triple wrapped and portioned out, they stay good in the freezer for many years. It is a lot of work to harvest these, so those were stuffed in with my seeds. That was a nice find. I pulled out perennial flowers so I can put these on my desk and go through and find out just when they need to be planted. I am all about perennials. Plants that are on autopilot are a gift, and I used to think that flowers were just a hobby, aesthetic type of pastime, but more and more these days I will do anything to attract pollinators. The bees just feast on them. We have huge swarms of butterflies, and anything that I can do to put on buffet for the guys that'll come and swarm and pollinate things. Oh, and the hummingbirds, I'm all about that. So I've got that pile to go upstairs, and I've pulled out an assortment of spinaches and lettuce, and I saw some purple zinnias and some lavender. I grow lavender every year and use it for several household items I make, and I'm getting ready to make a purple journal for a swap with Vicki Leach, and she's got me hooked on the color purple. Everything that I see, my eye just goes to it, and I think gotta show it to Vicki. So thank you for inspiring my planting, Vicki. And the one thing that I came down for, I actually found catnip for Tramp. Here it is, Kale. And that was the whole object, or excuse I should say, of going to the garden today, was to plant some kale. I'm sure I'll pick up some more starter plants at the nursery when we go by, because starter plants for the garden are it's like craft shopping. It gets out of control quickly, and the garden grows and grows. And even if I can harvest most of it, I'm fine with that. So also pulled out some other perennials here, and maybe this year I'll actually be able to get chamomile growing. I've tried it twice, and either it has turned out to be a very dry season and it wasn't in the garden because it's an invasive plant. You don't want to plant chamomile right in the vegetable garden unless you always want chamomile there. But I'm going to try some different tricks this year because I love chamomile tea. So let me gather up these seeds and I will get back to the garden. I am in back of my house now and walking past my potter's bench as I'm collecting stuff. I'm not going to use the tractor or the power tiller, any of the big boy tools today. I've got out my garden bucket, and what do I find but a kale plant, a volunteer from last year. I can't tell you how happy that makes me. As a matter of fact, I'm going to transplant it and put it in another pot, and I'll trim it, and in another week from now that will be kale chips in my kitchen. And the wonderful thing about kale is you can pick it until the snow comes at the end of the year, and it just keeps growing and growing if you care for it and you pluck it constantly enough and keep the buggies out of it, it will just keep giving. It's wonderful. So that made me really happy. I've got a lot of organizational stuff to do. My pots were just kind of stacked there beneath my potter's bench last year, and I've got all sorts of sorting to do over in the barn. That's the barn that Cog built for me 2 years ago, and we had to put it on stilts. It's just an amazing piece of construction. He put those pretty windows in it for me, and he let me pick out some foofy light fixtures. He calls it Mrs. Cog's Playhouse, but he may call it that, but it's his new tractor that's parked in it. And Tramp and Gray Kitty are exploring the backyard. I think they're happy to have me outside with them. Whenever we have fruit in the kitchen that is past eating and a little overripe, rather than throw it out, we either feed the apples to the donkeys and cows that live up the street, up the dirt road, off the other dirt road, or we throw it from our balcony and toss it, and it rolls right down the hill. And right down in that brush there's two families of possums, and I think it's them that eat the fruit. With the leaves down, you can see the edge of our property back there. We have 6 acres here, and where the ridge cuts off there and you see the clouds, that's because there's a drop off it's about a 1/4 mile down. It's a good drop off, and then faintly behind the trees you can see the next ridge of mountains over there. But soon it'll be spring and the leaves will come, and we won't be able to see any of it from our deck, which is fine. They're going to have a long walk back up here to join me in the garden. So I've walked around. I'm now in front of the barn. You can see our generator, and we've got a propane tank there to run it. It'll give us about 10 days of power through the generator to run the house when the grid electric goes down, and then of course we've got solar to supplement it with. But this is my pretty barn, and this is our garden. We've got a 1/4 acre fenced in. It's a high fence. It's 8 feet high, and we dug down about 2 feet, so these are 10-foot posts, and sunk them into the ground, and then buried bunny wire across the bottom so the little critters can't go under. So it should keep most of the bunnies out from that, and high enough. The deer can get over it, but at 8 feet there's so much growing around here, they usually don't go for that enormous kind of a jump. And the bears used to just lean on the fence and just cave it right in, and we've got it reinforced. So it's pretty animal proof. About once a year, Cog laughs at me when I'm out here chasing a bunny around the garden. We have mean bunnies. They come in and they pull up my herbs and stuff, and they don't even eat it. They just do it to be mean. So doesn't look like much now because it's been really cold and nothing has bloomed, but we've got perennials and stuff all ready to come up. All along here I've got purple and green asparagus, and that comes back every year on its own. And behind this maple tree, which I have so far left, it's a nice little piece of shade when I'm out here working in the summer. I can plop a lawn chair right under it and get a glass of lemonade or even a cup of tea cooled off and plop in the shade right in the garden, so that's nice. And this ugly square patch here is about, I'd say it's about 10 feet by 10 feet. It's a strawberry patch, and the strawberries come back every year on their own. We've got a compost pile here, and it's really ugly, but we dump all of our eggshells and coffee grinds and anything fresh that we chop off of the top or bottoms of our fruits and vegetables that goes here, and we have glorious earthworms down there. It's a worm farm, which is the best fertilizer you can possibly have for a garden. We do as much as we can organic here. My little grape trellis, nothing happening there yet. This is the lower small portion of the garden. We've got kiwi trees back here, and those brambles will overgrow this whole corner of the garden and make tiny little kiwi fruit, hardy kiwi they call them, and it's amazing. They just keep going every year. I think we've got 5 trees back there now, and we cut them way back last year. Going to try to train them better this year. And then we have the top garden, and this is our main planting area. A couple apple trees, peach trees. These are the amazing blueberry bushes that the previous owners planted, and I've had to cut them back. They were over 12 feet tall. I think they were finally big enough to peek over and call to the birds, fresh berries. We had our first bird intrusion last year, but they're wonderful, and I pick them and make blueberry jam, and I freeze them to put in our muffins throughout the year. So the kiwi, the blueberries, these 2 are dwarf peach trees, and I know spring is coming because, where is it? I just saw it. Look, that's hope. That's the color of hope. I love the first blooms popping out in the spring. Our apple trees don't have any on them yet, but the two peach trees here do. So, anyways, I'm going to get over here to the lower garden, and I am going to plant a couple rows of kale and lettuce. Look what the cat dragged in. I'm turning over this compost. Look how rich that dirt is. Nice and dark. And the cats have finally made it up from the woods. Hi, Tramp. Is Gray Kitty following you again? Wanna come plant? Meow. It's good to see you too. Yeah, it's not warm yet. Can you make the sun come out? Oh, I'll work on it too. Well, the wind is picking up and it's getting chilly out here. It's normal on the mountain. Not too worried. As long as the ground doesn't freeze, a deep freeze into the dirt, which it would take a pretty cold snap to do, I think we may be good to go on the kale and lettuce. So this is what they call a hydrant, a yard hydrant in the sticks in farm country, and I have put a four thingy adapter on it for me, and I've just gotten out the most heavy duty of the hoses. I've got this here because once the garden gets going, I like to leave hoses to go in different directions in the garden, and I can water several directions at once, or even if I just turn each one on and off one at a time, I'm able to do that without having to switch hoses and move things around too much. So let's just make sure all of this works. I've got the lever up, and I'm just gonna flip this on, and if it works, water should come pouring out. We've got really good water here, really clean water. So I'm going to turn this back off for a minute, and I got one of my good nozzles here. You don't want to scrimp on nozzles either. Boy, we've gone through a lot of cheap ones, and it's one of those things where you get what you pay for. So it's worth getting the $10 or $15 sprayers that will last you a couple seasons than to go with the $5 ones, which maybe half a summer we get out of it. So I'm going to put this on the end of my hose and stretch out over to my kale and get it watered. Well, I'm finished for the day. This is 2 months before we put our garden proper in, but it's in. I got 3 rows. I don't know how well they show up. The 4th I have not planted anything in, but these things are going to need some... Oh, do you hear the turkeys? Gobble, gobble in the woods. This last row, I kind of turned, these will need to be thinned out very quickly. They're in the front yard. Isn't that funny? I'm sorry. What a funny sound. Yeah, so a row of kale and 2 rows of lettuce, and I just hit them with some great mulch from the compost, and then some organic, and it's 533. It's garden tone. That it's a wonderful organic. Every time I talk, they start talking over me. A wonderful organic fertilizer, and some magnesium sulfite, which is Epsom salt, and that both puts magnesium back into the plants and into our food, which we are woefully lacking in our modern diets, as well as keeping the snails out of the garden. So hopefully we'll get some early greens here. That was a lot of fun. So thanks for joining me, and let me know if you want to see more of this type of thing, because I'm always puttering at something that's growing from here to the end of the season. I'm back to my craft room in a bit for more journaling. See you soon. Thanks. Bye.
Of all the magic places in the world I've been